good morning, and welcome to the Brenda Perryman Show right here on TV 33, WHPR, Comcast 90 in Detroit and Oakland County, and all over the world, courtesy of the World Wide Web at www.tv33whpr.com. And I have a great show for you this morning, a great show. I have two authors, but two authors you want to hear from. I first have wOneita Jackson, or as people refer to as wOneita cab driver, and I also have Sean, and we'll talk. I'll talk to him. He's a big surprise. It's my guy, um, and I will. Let's start with Anita. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm swell.
You look mighty beautiful this morning.
Thank you.
Let's give a shout out on that dress.
Oh, this would be you had Lene is it Lene? What is it? Miss Lynette. Lynette Hallilay on. I guess
Yeah.
it was last year.
Yes.
And she's one of the vendors at Easter Market. She arm knits and she
I
knits.
know she's amazing.
She is absolutely amazing. And on Sundays, she's at the Easter Market. And this is her dress. So this is the first time I'm wearing it. She had some clothes one day she
It
was
is
getting rid of, and I
gorgeous.
snatched this dress up.
You should have snatched it.
Miss
You
Lynette,
shoulda.
if you're watching, I'm wearing your dress.
Shout out, shout out, shout out. So, Anita has a great book out. It's called Nappy Headed Negro Syndrome. Now, many times people have called people a nappy headed Negro. I've been hearing that term since I was a little girl. But I'm going to ask you where you got the title, or why did you decide to make this the title? And then we're going to go back to a little history of Oneita.
Okay, so what happened is you mentioned I drive a cab, which is no longer, I don't drive a cab any longer, but I'm a driver. I left the Detroit Free Press 3 years ago, and 2 weeks later, I started driving a yellow cab. And I've been trying to figure out how to write this cab book. Obviously, I'm a writer.
Yeah.
And I have too much material. So I distilled some of the information. I mean, my bag of material is this big.
My gosh.
Yes, it
You
seriously.
condensed it.
No, I just condensed those stories. So what happened is these things happened to me, and I wrote a list. I made a list of these things that occur, and I thought they were pretty funny. And I said, okay, I'll just start the cab book with this. And what it became is this nappy-headed Negro syndrome. So these stories are about identity. And what happened, I didn't come up with the title, actually. I think it was divine intervention. I just made this list. There were about 14 stories. And I looked and I said, I need to call that something.
Yeah.
And nappy-headed Negro, I'll just tell people it was God. Nappy-headed Negro just came to my head.
So you say you're a driver,
Yes,
and like
I drive people to and from the airport, people from all over the world.
right,
I've driven people from
How do they
7
know
continents.
to contact you?
Yes, I'm the magnificent. So
Oh, okay.
yes,
I
I'm
can dig it.
Yes, I didn't
Because
say that. They said it, so I'm
I'm
just
gonna
using
have
it.
you be my driver. I always get driven to the airport.
Really,
So,
and
yeah.
you then why don't you call me? This is what I don't understand.
Well, I got to go out of town again first.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so you decided to name it.
Right. It came to me, nappy-headed Negro syndrome. So what I did want to explain, when we're talking about identity in the book and judgment and
And
assumptions,
perception.
obviously,
Perception.
obviously, I have straightened hair, right? And so someone asked me, well, how are you, how are you writing a book about nappy-headed Negro? In my family, I'm nappy-headed. So my mother has boing, boing, curly hair. When I grew up, I used to pull my mother's hair, boing, and I'd say boing, boing, and she has really beautiful, long, curly hair. And so I don't have that hair. So I've been nappy-headed in my own family, and obviously I'm a wordsmith. So the definition of nappy is hair like nap. So back here, when the perm isn't there, my hair is nappy. So some people consider it pejorative. It's if that's what you consider it, but for me, it's hilarious.
And I think in a way, it's like a metaphor too. But I was going to say something. Oh, this was
History
so
says
important.
something about history.
Um, let's go back into your history. You're not from here.
I am not.
let's tell the
I'm from here
audience.
now.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, I'm from here now.
I
I
always
am.
call it a not so native
I'm a
Detroiter.
Detroiter. I've
Hmm.
had people tell me you're not a Detroiter. I'm like, I am now.
No, no, no.
So I'm originally, well, you can't take my Detroit from me.
Right.
Right. So I am originally from Dayton, Ohio, born and reared in Dayton, Ohio. And I spent my summers in New York City growing up. I lived in D.C. 14
What part
years,
of New York?
Washington Heights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just past Harlem, past
Yeah.
155th Street, and you go up into Washington
You
Heights.
had relatives there?
Yes, my grandmother and my aunt left Alabama. So, that migration.
Right.
So they migrated to the east. So that's where they landed. My uncle, my grandfather stayed in Alabama. And so my brother and I were sent to New York City every summer. And then I lived in Washington, D.C. 14 years. I've been here now 14. And I did live in Albany, New York also.
You know, it's funny because my relatives in New York always sent their kids south for the summer.
Yes.
And it was like the opposite that you were sent to New York. I remember when I was 16 and that was my first time in New York, it was like coming from here and I'm saying, where are the grass and trees? And it was really a bit of a culture shock within my own culture because it was a black neighborhood. But then I just learned to love New York. I love New York. So, where'd you go to school?
To
College?
I went to Howard.
Oh, okay.
I have an English degree from Howard. I
Well, you,
finally graduated when I was 32.
well, better late than never. I remember reading your columns in the Free Press, and I always enjoyed them so much.
Thank you.
You're an excellent, excellent, excellent writer.
Thank you.
And in the book, it kind of makes me laugh. But it's all about perception. It's so much of this is about what people perceived you to
Right.
be when they saw you, and it wasn't like that. And that happens to a lot of us. People perceive certain things, and it's not so.
Right. So the syndrome is not unique to me.
Right.
So I have customers, for example, I have a customer who flies in from Philadelphia. He's British and more African than I will ever be. He's from Namibia, or is it, no, is it Zambia? It's either Zambia or Namibia. And we talk, my customers and I mean, as I said, I have people from all over the world. I have lots of Europeans come here, people from South America, all over the country. I have not had anyone from Antarctica yet. But we
Well,
talk
that could
about,
be coming.
I'm waiting. We talk about these life things, and Justin, his name is Justin. Justin talks about his mother having been a racist and his father having a really pure heart. So they were upper class British people and they never referred to Africa as home, but Africa was his only home. And he talks also about there was a strike. There was going to be a strike in the mines, and the managers wanted his father to go talk to the workers. And he said, well, I'm white. And he said, yeah, but you have a black heart. So when we talk about this syndrome, it's just judgment and assumptions, and when people come to a conclusion. So the four things I talk about in this book, there are two dominant themes, as I said: identity. And then I have a keychain that I bought at my friend Joe Posh's store that says, do you know who the Fuck I am? And that's really what it is. And that's an entendre too, because it's like, you don't know anything about me, yet you have come to a
Come to
conclusion.
about
And so
you.
the two sub themes that inform this work are: someone is trying to constantly communicate this idea to me that I'm not exactly where I am supposed to be, or they're assigning me to a context to which they think I belong. And it's hilarious.
Right,
And it's
right.
not hilarious. That's what my satire happens to be funny, but subverting these things.
Give my audience one example of that.
Okay, well, when I show up to the chicken wing joint in the hood, that's the first story, yes.
Yeah.
Learning a wing or two. I show up to the chicken wing joint. My friend's driving this day. I'd already had Popeyes, and I asked this woman, their billboard
This was
was broken.
Captain Jay's.
Captain Jay's, yes, on 6 Mile and Gratiot. And I'd already had Popeyes, but I'm like, I need some chicken wings. Can I go over there? Because their chicken is, I don't know what this stuff is. They sprinkle on the chicken. But there's a manager crossing the lot, and I say, excuse me, how much is a chicken wing? And she said, we don't take the EBT card.
Right away, she said that.
Yes,
Right
yes.
away.
No, well, she said, "What method of payment am I using?" And this is for whatever reason. If you see the book
Why
trailer,
would she ask you about that?
listen, I just tell the story. I don't come to conclusions for the reader. I just tell the story because I think it's funny. So I do my Gilbert Gottfried face because I thought it was an odd question. What, so she, and I'm like, am I using? I thought that was strange, right? And so then she tells me. So that's one instance. We will let the readers
Right,
discern
right,
for
right,
themselves.
right,
We will
right.
let them get the humor.
But
But
I'm sure all of us have been in a situation where people have assumed things about us without even knowing us.
right, and so this book is also a subtle commentary on the media because, for example, when I'm at my friend's party, and I'm the only black person there, and I say I'm a knitter, and the woman thinks I said something else, it's I don't think she thought she was looking at that word that people put the N in front of. But if I were a white friend, would she have come to a conclusion that I said in polite company that I was that word?
Right.
Like, how do you get to that? We're
How do
having a
you?
polite conversation, and I say, I'm a knitter, because I am. And as a matter of fact, before I started writing in the newspaper, that's how people knew me. Oh, you're the scarf chick. And then, well, how long have you been at the paper? It's like 7 years. But I'm a knitter. Knitter. Knitter.
Have you ever, maybe not here in the book, but a lot of times you let your actions kind of speak for themselves. That's what I notice about you in this. Well, like, well, I can't give away any of
Yes.
this.
Well, which story? What
No,
story?
no, I was just thinking about the Neiman Marcus.
Neiman Marcus take one, or Neiman Marcus when I show up and I'm in raggedy clothing, and the woman asks, am I applying for a job?
Right,
And
right.
so in a couple, the writing is very visual, right?
Very.
It's visual. I mean, I studied English. I study words. I read semantics books for fun. I study signifying and
Right.
Art Buchwald and Andy Rooney and William Sapphire. So I'm not playing around here. So what comes off is very easy. It's visual for a reason, because I want you to know that based on how I'm looking, how could you have come to a conclusion when I tell you twice, Muffy is my friend,
I'm
and you
looking for
wonder,
Muffy.
right, am I applying for a job because I speak to someone in Neiman Marcus? And so Neiman Marcus is Neiman Marcus. Maybe if I were dressed this way, and not even maybe, because I didn't say, I'm wOneita, I'm applying for a job, correct?
Right,
I said, where's my girl Muffy?
right. Well, I'll never forget. I taught, as you know, I taught
Yes.
school,
Yes.
and when I first went to Southfield, I was talking. It was mostly the teachers were mostly white, which was fine with me. I didn't care.
Right.
But we're talking in the teacher's lounge. That's why I wasn't too interested in being in a teacher's lounge. I was talking. I said, "Oh gosh, I got to make it to my kids, such and such." You're a mother? You have children? I said, yeah. They said, well, it doesn't seem like you have children.
So, well,
What,
how
what
should
was
one
the,
seem?
well, how should one seem? I want to say, should I look like you? But I didn't say that. It's just so many times during our lives, people just, they sum us up without even knowing us.
It's really important to note that this work is not black or white,
It
because
certainly
there are
isn't.
people, it
It
has
certainly
nothing to
isn't.
do. I just happen to call wOneita in this body, in this syndrome, nappy headed, and because I'm a satirist and I use irony,
Right.
that is
That's
extremely
what I was
funny to me.
always impressed about your columns with the Free Press. So you fell in love with Detroit.
I did. Detroit is cool. I mean, there's a lot to not like about it. So I'm a real Detroiter. I love and hate Detroit. When I get on a plane, when I just got back from New York, I took the bus, and I'm in New York with my family, with my friends. I'm running all over the city, taking pictures, doing the little traveling nappy-headed Negro in front of the George Washington Bridge in the Bronx, the Giovanni's Pizza everywhere in my neighborhood, and I become really sad. Like, why do I live in Detroit? And then I get back and I run into some fabulous people. It's like, oh yeah, Detroit is cool. I love Brenda. I love Sean. I run into the people in Midtown. All of my friends. The Detroit is sustaining me. It's really cool. I love the people in it. But there are some things. I mean, I grew up in a city where public transportation works well. and I'm
Right.
in transportation. And I don't know any people. I'm the only person I know, not necessarily to drive a foreign car, but to write a column about driving a foreign car in the city, who rode a bus to work, who used to take a cab to work when I missed the bus, who drives a vehicle, and I'm in the transportation industry, so I have a unique perspective from,
Right.
right, and I have a son I used to put on the bus also, so.
Yes, your perspective is it's different, it's
So
fun,
what's different?
and it's full because what you do, it's like you look at the wider picture. You could tell you've been exposed. You just look at the big picture. Some people, in fact, I talked about this yesterday, not about your book, but I was talking to someone and they were saying they're trying to get me to be on these committees and kind of raise me up in the company, he was telling me. And I told him, I said, why? He said, because I think differently. And I said, people who think differently are of value to society.
See, so my thing is, as a satirist, and as it's like, what's different? People tell, oh, you wear mismatched
Oh,
earrings. Oh,
that's
you did.
okay.
But what I'm saying is, what's different? I am who I
Because so
am.
many people engage in group think, group, everything they do is what the group is doing. And I'm a person who appreciates a person who can do what they want.
But so, and that's what it is. It's about being yourself.
Right.
That's part of what my call is. It's like
You
I'm
know, a
sitting
lot,
here, I'm me, right?
right. And a lot of times people say, well, that's rebellious, or because I've been called a rebel.
I
I'm
mean,
just
yeah,
saying,
well, I'm
yeah,
that also.
yeah. I mean,
Talk to
but
my mother. My mother can't see the second chapter of this book. I'm gonna have my publisher print. Yeah, skip that chapter in the book. But
right,
if people are paying attention, okay. So I just drove these Lutherans. So we had 30,000 Lutherans in town for the gathering. They ordered 12 books. One group of Lutherans, they just hit me and said these. They were from. Let's see, I've had some from Grand Forks, North Dakota. But my drivers, my buddies, and I downtown, we put on a hospitality clinic for them. But I had some pastors. One pastor, he's pretty stiff and stuffy. He's sitting in the back. This is my last group of Lutherans to take to the airport. And he said, "Oh, well, you have this. I can't put this in the church library because you have this thing called the MF with the shoes." And I
right.
said, "Well, funny you should say that because some of your very Lutherans, especially some of the other pastors, just ordered. They're waiting for my book to come. So if people are offended by certain types of language, you have to understand I use words. That's my job. I work with words and dictionaries and foils for Lavery. I love my words. So, but the title alone might be the MF with the shoes, and I'm signifying there MF with the hat, which my buddy Sean Rodriguez Sharp over there produced.
The great actor,
The great,
director.
wonderful Sean. So, but when you read this, you see that this first paragraph is dripping with the condescension that this man was communicating to me when I say, "Sir, those are really nice shoes. What kind are they?" And he says, "Very expensive." So what I'm trying to figure out is, what is a very expensive shoe? I even had a woman say to me in Staples, the calendars were very expensive because I thought they should have been on sale. Calendars go on
Right.
sale.
After a couple
Right,
months,
right, right. And I'm like, okay, are they on sale? She said, no. I said, where are they? She said, well, they're in aisle whatever it was, and they're very expensive. So I'm trying to figure out what define expensive calendars. I used to buy, you have these Tiffany and Company glasses. So I used to buy these Tiffany and Company little planners until I figured out the company that actually produces the planner. Yeah, so they used to be like 25, 30 bucks. But in like March, they were cheaper. But that's not very expensive. Like a very expensive calendar to me would be like a calendar that was $8,722. That's very expensive,
Right,
right? But
right.
but define different. Define very expensive.
Have you ever walked into a store and I remember taking my son into a clothing store, and the first thing the lady said to me as we walked in, the sale is in the back. It's like,
Right, right.
and
So
then I just
right,
turned
so
around and
so
walked
the
out.
other thing with this is I didn't just write, oh ha ha ha, these things are funny. The standard for my writing has always been when something strikes me. So that, oh, that happens. That doesn't strike me. But I tell people the 212th time I have a problem. So this is 212. This is,
Right.
I've dismissed, oh, you're articulate. Yes, you are too. I've
Oh,
dismissed all of that. But when when I sit down and write, then we have a problem. And I hope that people will get something insightful because there's a lot buried in here. It's
well, what I
accessible.
like about it too, you don't use a lot of flowery language. You just say what you mean. Drunk people scare me.
Yeah, drunk white people scare me. Yes, it says drunk
Right.
white people scare me, and they do, especially at certain times. Yes. So I mean,
I mean,
I'm a driver,
you just say it like you say it like you mean it.
and so how should I? I mean, what I recall from being a columnist and receiving emails from readers, people had problems with my blatant honesty. And I think you remember Dean Martin, that Dean
Yeah,
Martin and Ruth
yeah,
Buzzy, and
right.
they all were upfront, like Carol O'Connor, what was his name? Archie
Archie
Bunker.
Bunker.
Archie Bunker. So that was a time we hearkened to those times when we were more honest and less politically correct
Right, right.
and,
No
and, and so
filter, no filter.
well, I actually I do have filters. I
I was
cannot
thinking about
say
Archie Bunker, the character.
yes.
There were no filters.
Right, right. And we all learned. We watched that. We learned. We watched. What was the spinoff? That the Jeffersons.
And
That was a
Maud.
spinoff, right?
And
The
Maud.
Jeffersons and Maude. So we watched All in the Family, and we identified with Archie Bunker and Edith and Mike. They were family people, right? It was
Yeah.
a family, and
Yes.
so you can identify with me as a
Absolutely.
person, as a driver. And the other thing is, this that free press out was just one job that informs or did part of what informs the work. I mean, I'm a driver. I've been a waitress. I've worked on Wall Street. I've worked at a parking garage. I've worked at Allstate Insurance, Budget Rent-A-Car. I've had 30 jobs in my life. So the reason I can access things from the chicken wings to Bergdorf's is because I've experienced
Right,
that.
right. Where can we get your book?
Okay, you can get it online at Dakota Avenue West Publishing. Also, Felicia's Flow Boutique on Cass and
On,
Willis,
oh, yeah,
Cass and
Willis.
Willis,
Willis.
right?
No, right.
And Savvy Chic, Karen's Place at Eastern Market.
Okay.
All right. Ditto, Ditto, the bookstore on, I think it's Bagley and Trumbull. I was by there yesterday. I saw Maya. John King used books. Everyone.
Everybody knows John
Yes,
King.
right. So, and I love all these people because they're carrying this. And Eric's I've Been Framed and Hartford Memorial Baptist Church bookstore. So they're everywhere. So and we just Google. Lots of my friends are like, "Where can I get it?" It's like type in nappy-headed Negro syndrome and
Because there's
Onita
nothing
Jackson.
right.
Right, Dakota Avenue West. This is not difficult, but my friends seem to. Where can I get your book?
Oh, do we have a call for this segment? See, I just want to make sure I'm calling the segment to an end.
Well, do I get to read from my book?
Oh, did you want to quickly? Let's
Well,
do
why
that.
don't you choose something? What struck you?
Okay. Oh, well, the
Obviously, all of it
chicken.
was striking.
Right, right.
And this is proceduralist, recursive satire.
Okay, we have a call. Good morning. Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Fine. Am I speaking with?
DJ Marvel International
Oh,
Hip Hop.
hey, how you doing?
All right, how you doing?
Good.
First, I'd like to give you and your guests a shout out. I'd
Hi.
like to shout out E33, RJ Watkins, and all other show hosts. Ms. Perryman, you're having a great show, as usual.
Thank
And
you.
it's the conversation that you and your guests was having that opened up my interest into your show today.
Go, Brenda. Go,
The
Brenda.
comment or
Not my
the
birthday.
mindset I like to talk about is I run a hip hop organization, and I've run a hip hop organization for over 5 years. And when I started running my hip hop organization, I used to apply everything about how I think. Now there's over 5,000 members in the organization, and one thing I learned over these 5 years, I can't always put my personality into my leadership. So what I would like to ask is, when it comes down to making a product, and this comes down, I guess it's the question I like to ask your host. I noticed your host
My
creates
guess.
books of literature,
Yeah.
and she put a lot of her personality into her literature. I would like to ask her, how would she make literature that's not really designed for people who are familiar with her experience?
How would I make literature for people who are not familiar with my experience? Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
And why would
Based
I do
on,
that? I have to ask you.
uh,
So why would that be my goal?
huh?
What
You
I'm
said, why would
asking
that be
you,
your goal?
right? I do what I do. I want to make sure I understand your question. You're saying you began by saying something about you can't put all of your personality into your leadership, correct?
Hmm.
So and you help me. Let me know if I'm answering your question. I've
Hmm.
never not been me in any job I've ever had. Obviously, I censor me, but just so you know, in my writing, I write for one audience, and I write for me. And when I was at the Free Press, I had an editor who told me that then I should consider doing something else. And I said to that editor, well, you all asked me to write for you, and that's been my only audience, and that was 2 years ago. So what I'm telling you is I don't know how not to be true to myself. So if someone is trying to make you or you feel that you can't be honest in who you are, like that's I think that's one of the biggest problems with society. People can't be themselves. So when I write, and just so you know, I don't write black, I don't write green, I write English and what strikes me, and my writing is received by people all over the world and has been. I had readers in Finland. I had an 80-year-old gentleman in the suburbs who told me that he learned a lot from me. My son went to the University of Detroit Jesuit High School, and he'd come home and he'd say, Mom, Father Kaiser said, did you see what your mom wrote about you yesterday? And then his friends' parents would be like, we saw what you wrote about your son yesterday. And then he'd come home and be like, Mom, my boys were like, did you see what your mom wrote about you? And so what I'm telling you, and did I answer the
But
question?
that's, but, well, no, but that's a good
Hurry up, DJ,
example
because we got
of
to
what
go
I'm
to end
referring
of this
to.
segment.
Now, me as a leader of an organization, I start the organization based on my total mindset. Okay, one of the mindset is I'm colorblind, and I see everybody as a child of God until I give them a reason not to. So I'm here in the United States. That's not a common mindset here in the United States, but that's a mindset that can be applied in all 240 countries.
Well, I'm.
So,
Can I just kind of?
so
Oh,
the
hurry,
uh, the
hurry.
the thing is that when we create products for sale, we create products for sale based on other people's needs, wants, and desires. Okay,
I don't know.
so
I
mhm,
gotta kind of stop you right there. I remember when I wrote my first book,
mhm,
somebody said, "Well, you teach kids. You need to write for kids." No, I need to write for myself, and that's the way I did. And I've sold so many books all over the country and the world. So I think that people need to know who you are depending upon what you're doing. But I have to kind of call this segment to a close. Can you come back one day?
Certainly, but I do want to tell you this. One of the books that I recommend people read, and the Sunday New York Times is a column called Corner Office, Adam Bryant. And he has a book called Corner Office and Quick and Nimble. And you should see the look on the vice president's face when his little yellow cab driver is like, have you read this book? And I begin to talk about it. So maybe
DJ.
Daryl, DJ, start
mhm.
reading Corner Office in the Sunday New York Times and grab his book also from like Barnes and Noble or somewhere. And thank you so
And
much.
think about it. Think of it. Put you, we have another phone. Well, okay, we got to make it quick. 45 seconds. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm enjoying your program.
Thank you.
Your guest mentioned something that I thought was so good, and that was when someone says, you're so articulate, to say, thank you, and so are you. I thought that was just such a good answer.
Well, we don't have to
Thanks
be
for the,
combative.
thanks for
Right.
that answer.
Well, thank you.
Bye now.
Thanks a
Thank you.
lot. And you know, it's funny because you hear that a lot if you speak kind of the quote King's English.
I mean, just so we're clear, I study English. I have a
Right.
degree. Like if
Me
when
too.
people
Me,
right, so
yeah.
people say, "Oh, well, you speak." If you're an engineer, I hope you know what a water table is and what
Right.
the EMC square and all that stuff is. So, yes, I studied English, I studied Spanish, I speak Ebonics, and I speak it fluently.
I
Yes,
know. I just love you so much.
yes.
Onita Jackson. Everyone, try and get her book, Nappy
No,
Headed.
don't try, get it.
Get it, get
Yes,
it.
yes,
Nappy
yes.
Headed Negro Syndrome. The stories are delightful. The stories make you say, shoot, it's okay to tell people who I am.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. Oh,
I mean, because they find out who are sooner or
come on. Your
later.
next guest has to get on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Now you rush me. All right. I'll see you in just a moment. Stay tuned. And we have table talk today, and it's good.